flowers bloom in spring. Tell me who gives the air that you breathe. Ooh. Everything that you need he will provide, so you may as well come on and give him a try. 'Cause he's awesome. Ooh, he's awesome. He's awesome. What would I do without him? Couldn't make a move without him. I don't wanna be without him. He's awesome.
What's up, ladies? Welcome to ZMR Ministries. I'm Pastor Z, and it's Friday, so you know it's time for another episode of Girl Talk. Now, tonight's topic is called It's a Wrap. We're going to be talking about boundaries, bottom lines, and when to keep them. Now, y'all know on Fridays, you know, we just hop right into it. We don't need an introduction, but I'm going to tell you, I got Simone and Bridget, the sisters. They're here with me tonight, and we're going to be talking about when you need to say, it's a wrap, I'm done. Right? So first, ladies, I want to talk about boundaries and bottom lines. How important is it to have boundaries and bottom lines in relationships? Any type of relationship.
Go ahead, Simone. I think it's very important to have boundaries because you have to, when you're dealing with somebody, you have to know, that's anybody, dating, friends, whatever. Right. You have to be able to say, this is what I'm going to expect out of the relationship. This is what I'm not going to expect. And if they cross that, you have to be willing to say, I'm done, because you will not take me down or put me to another level that I was not on. So to keep your sanity, to keep you where you're trying to be, you have to have boundaries.
Bridget?
I agree. Boundaries is something that I'm learning. But it is important to be upfront and set those expectations, so you kind of know when there's a point when there should be a cutoff. Or you can never say that I didn't know, or if a line was crossed, you can never say that you weren't aware of it prior to, because we've already kind of set that precedent and the expectations.
And you know what? I think first of all, to me, boundaries and bottom lines are two separate things, right? First of all, boundaries, I think, of parameters. And so you build parameters around your bottom line. So if your bottom line is no disrespect, period. And so what you do is you build walls around, or parameters around, you know, what you consider disrespect. And so that keeps people, you know, it gives them limitations, right? So that they cannot cross that bottom line. And so it's important to me, you know, like you guys were saying, to establish that in the beginning. Some people wait until they're well into friendships, relationships, you know, business relationships or whatnot, and they wait on a fence to start building parameters and bottom lines. And it's like, okay, had you already set that from the beginning, then you wouldn't be offended, because you would just say, you know what? I set this standard at the beginning of our relationship, friendship, business, working relationship, whatever it is, even in ministry. It's like you have to set a bottom line first. I was telling Bridget not too long ago, and I was saying, you know, it was a conversation I had with somebody, and I said, you know, you don't wait until you're successful and you have a lot to lose to start setting bottom lines. You need to set that from the beginning. So wherever you begin to grow in your career, in ministry, in your endeavors, whatever it is, it's like that's going to always stay the same. It's like a mission statement. And the moment that you start crossing that line of my personal mission statement, my personal bottom line, that's when you get to, it's a wrap. You know what I'm saying? It's time to cut the cord. So what is your bottom line? I asked you that before we get into boundaries.
Well, I'm being honest, I'm still kind of searching for a bottom line and a boundary, because I really didn't establish boundaries or bottom line. It was just kind of like one of those, I internalized just about everything. So it was kind of like I knew what was offensive to me, but I didn't vocalize that. So in saying that, I think one of the things when it comes down to a relationship, whether it's a relationship like between me being with someone pursuing, the future or even with friends, one thing that I tell people all the time, I can't stand when somebody hangs up the phone in my face. That's almost as bad as spitting in my face. To me, that's so disrespectful. You have no regard to what I have to say. Honestly, I'd rather you just say, I don't want to talk about it right now, and we go to and we say bye, we talk about it later. That's just total disrespect for me. So that is a bottom line for me.
Right.
You might it's the first time it happened, I'm going to remind you. That second time, I'm not calling you back. We don't have anything to talk about because I've already told you that's disrespectful to me. Again, like when you say my bottom line is respect, because I feel like I respect everybody and I expect that in return.
Right.
And then you build your boundaries and saying I need you to stay within these parameters.
Right.
Those are just a couple, of the things that I've been able to establish with myself for now that's important to me.
Simone, what's one of your bottom lines?
I think one of mine is lying. I
Mm-hmm.
hate liars. I think that's either in a relationship or friendship or, like I said, business. Especially with business, that's a relationship.
Right.
So you're dealing with each other's money. If we're saying we're business partners, I'm entrusting that you gonna take care of my family. You trusting that I'm gonna take care of your family. So you coming in lying to each other and doing, I can't stand that.
Right.
Because if you lying, then how can I trust you? So that's a pet peeve of mine.
You know what? And definitely, I mean, both of those, but lying is really huge. Because it's like, if you know the old saying, if you lie, you'll steal, you'll kill. And that just on and on. What's after kill? Really nothing, right? But, when someone lies to you, it is blatant disrespect.
Yeah.
Because you don't respect me enough to trust that whatever your truth is, that I can handle it. And so it's like, when you lie to someone, it's deception. And when I think of deception, I think of manipulation.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like, oh, you trying to play games with me. You know what I'm saying? And so in terms of respect, I think that all falls under respect me. It's about setting a line of respect where you're like, okay, we're not going to yell at each other. We're not going to curse at each other. We're going to respect that when we are both upset, we're going to take some time away and just say, okay, I may get mad and be like, I'm done. Click. But because I know that's one of Bridget's bottom lines, I'm going to say, let me call you back. Now, I ain't going to wait on you to respond when I say let me call you back. I'm just going to hang up the phone. And then, I'm just going to look at it like, well, I ain't hang up in your face. I told you to let me call you back. But it's like when you're in interchanging relationships, right? With people and you're setting these bottom lines, you have to make sure that you're connected with people who will respect that, right? And so what I see is a lot of times people who set standards, who set bottom lines, and they build parameters, they're constantly, I guess coming into contact with people who refuse to respect that. And I think we touched on this, on another episode, but it wasn't in depth. Simone, how do you deal with people who refuse to respect your bottom lines and your boundaries?
If you can't respect them, I can't deal with you.
Right.
That's one thing because, just a prime example, like you said, lying. If you continue to lie to me, it puts me into a mind frame of you don't respect me or you think I'm stupid. And it makes me get out of character.
Right.
So it's like before I even get out of character with you, I cannot deal with you. Especially when you're trying to reach a goal. If that person is not there to help you move to that next level, reach that goal, and help motivate you, and they're always, your relationship with them, you're always constantly going backwards, I can't deal with you. I'll cut you off.
Yeah.
So if you are friends with somebody, if that person is somebody who you want to have in your life and they want to be in your life, they should be able to respect your boundaries just like you respect theirs. And if you can't, then y'all don't respect each other.
Yeah. Bridget?
Like I say, I fully agree, with what Simone is saying. Again, that's an area where I'm very transparent on that as an area for growth of me because my cutoff game ain't that strong. I'm learning that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm learning that those boundaries are set up to protect you. And they've created a parameter to keep you from injuring yourself.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you set these guardrails, these parameters, these boundaries that you're operating inside of. And a lot of times when you go outside of where you're supposed to be, you end up injuring yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those injuries become detrimental to you.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time for you to recover for something that you were well aware of. You know that set you off. And you know that's one of your triggers, and you know that hurts you. So you have to be strong enough to say, okay, you gonna get one time, this is your warning. You know, here, and after that, be okay with releasing you and letting you go, because at that point they really are disrespecting you.
Right.
And you have to have enough respect for yourself to say, I'm not going to continue with this, and I'm not going to allow you to treat me like this or do this. So for me, it is getting to the point which I've gotten better at, you know, and saying, okay, we're gonna go ahead and let you go.
So when you think about boundaries in anything, or parameters, guardrails, is to protect someone. Mm-hmm. You know, because there's danger on the other side. And I heard Bridget just say, you know, that boundaries are to protect me, but also it's to protect the other person. Right. Because you know your limitations, mm-hmm. and you know the danger on the other side of disrespect. And so it's like, okay, I'm putting this in line to protect myself, so I won't go to jail. And I'm also putting this boundary in line to protect you, so you won't be laying up in the hospital or dead. Right. Or whatever the repercussions may be. It's like, okay, I'm putting it there because I understand my limitations. I understand, like Bridget, I always say, my vices. And it's like, it's there to protect everyone so that we can all coexist and be cohesive, especially like Simone said, if we're, you know, business partners. It's like there has to be a trust factor there. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's commingling funds, whether it's making business deals without me, whether it's going on business meetings without me, you know, it's like, okay, set that standard and that boundary up front. That we gonna do everything together, so there'll be no confusion, so there'll be no mishaps, so there won't be any underhanded stuff that I feel like you're doing under the table to betray me. Y'all, it's so important, because I run into so many people who, you know, confide in me about their situations, you know, confrontations that they've had with people, and it's like, okay, you allowed this to go on because there was no bumper. You know what I'm saying? When you're going through a parking lot and you may see something else on the other side of the parking lot, but you have that little rail there with those little reflectors, and you're like, man, why they put this right here in the middle of the parking lot? It's there for a reason. And you can crash your car through it. You may can get out your car and walk around it, but it's there for your safety. Why do you think, or why do y'all think, you know, so many people go through life without setting those bottom lines and those parameters?
I don't think, maybe some people just maybe never thought about it. You know, mm-hmm. They never sit down and say, well, what are my, you know, parameters?
Right.
What is it that I will accept and won't accept?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're dealing with somebody like that, you're just going with the flow of everything. Mm-hmm. And everything's fine until they do something that you don't like. And then all of a sudden, it may be blown up times 10. Right. Because that is your trigger. Mm-hmm. So it's like people really need to sit down and know, what are my triggers? What is it that, if you do, it's going to set me all the way off. Right. And you need to explain it to them. Mm-hmm. Hey, do not ever do this. This is a trigger for me. Mm-hmm. And be vocal about it and stand your ground.
Yeah. Bridget?
I think there's a couple of things. I can speak for myself, mm-hmm. you know, in regards to saying you don't know because you never sat down and dealt with self. Mm-hmm. So I have no idea, you know, what it is and how to communicate that to somebody because I didn't know how. Right. I hadn't been able, to communicate with myself. Mm-hmm. To say, okay, Bridget, this is how you do this. This is how you need to say this, you know, and everything else. And then two, with the maturity and the growth that I've had within myself, I had to admit that I didn't know how to set that boundary because I was afraid of what I would lose. Right. You know, in regards to that, because to me, I was like, well, there's some value there, or I don't want to hurt their feelings, though they're hurting my feelings. And it goes back to pleasing people before I pleased myself. Mm-hmm. So it was being real with myself and saying, oh, I'm thinking if I let this person go, then I'm going to be losing something, not realizing that I'll be adding more if I just release it.
Yeah. And you know what? I think about boundaries as rules. You know, you don't think about breaking rules until their rules are made. You know, you may have never thought about skipping school until somebody said, you cannot skip school. Now it's like, okay, now you have the urgency or the temptation, rather, not urgency, but you're tempted to do what you can't do. And I think sometimes that's the same thing whenever you start, okay, so prime example with Bridget, you know, her learning how to set those boundaries. And when you're not somebody who has set that, like I'm one of those people, y'all know I'm up front. I don't like that. You can't do this with me, period. And so when you're one of those people who have never set those parameters, and then, you know, people have gotten accustomed to you not having any bottom lines and boundaries. And so when you start coming to the realization, wait a minute, there's a lot of lines being crossed here that I'm not comfortable with, so let me reassess. Or like I tell y'all sometimes about my friend Zena, hey girl, she was telling me one time about a situation that she had with somebody, and she said, I couldn't even be mad at them because I had to explain to them somewhere I misrepresented myself, where it conveyed to you or you interpreted as, this is okay. And so now I'm telling you from this point on, that's not okay. And so what happens is when you start putting those lines in order, putting those boundaries in place, people, it's kind of like a repellent. They get mad because they like the freedom of running over you. They like the freedom of taking advantage. They like the freedom of, I don't have to respect you to this certain level. I can do what I want to do. And then when you set those standards in place, it's like, oh, look, who do you think you are telling me that I have to respect you in this way? Because that's the bottom line is that's what they're saying. You know, and so when you have someone like Bridget who doesn't set those up front, and some people, in all honesty, just, you know, just as a defense for them, they don't know. They don't know that you need to set these in place. And some of them don't know how. Because it's been like this for so long, it's like, how do I come in and change it? And so, Bridget, I want you to jump in on that because, you know, of course you said you're learning, but what's a way that you decided, okay, this isn't working, I need to start putting some parameters in place?
You have to learn how to communicate that.
Yeah.
You know, and it was there, and I had to be real with myself and say, I don't like this. You know, and again, like I've said in prior episodes, you got to really do some soul searching. And when you start searching and get into the root of your problem and why you don't like it, then you can start vocalizing that to somebody else, because the first person you got to be real with is yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can't be real with yourself and hold yourself accountable, then how you gonna hold somebody else accountable?
That's good.
And that's the main thing. And then when you do it, you're gonna have to communicate that, clearly communicate that, and mean it when you say it, because they're gonna test you. Yeah. And that's the main thing. Oh, she said it. She ain't changed. You know, because you said a lot of things before, and again, people are comfortable with how they've been treating you because you've accepted it. Yeah. So, and that's just like a lot of times you're gonna keep on putting on this old outfit until you bust the seams out on it. You know, I'm gonna keep trying it until I finally bust the seam and I can't wear it anymore. Yeah. Because in my mind, I can continue to do this. So the thing is, someone is going to continue to treat you like that because that's how they've been able to handle you, and you've allowed it. Yeah. So they're gonna want to see, okay, let me see if she's really talking about that. And it's when you put your foot down and you stick to your guns, and it's not gonna feel good at first because it's outside of your comfort zone. And it's a process, and you will feel like you're losing people.
Right, I was gonna say, you know, a piece of why people don't want to do that is because there's a little space of people pleasing. You know, and it's like they want to be accepted. I don't want to push anybody away. I don't want them to look at me like, oh, you know, you can't be around her. She got too many rules, you know, this, that, and the other. And it takes mature, you know, individuals to say, you know what, no, I don't see that as her trying to be brand new. She's finding that, you know, I'm at a place in life now where I have to set up standards, and I have to set up parameters, and I have to set up boundaries, because this is what I need for my life now. What worked, you know, before doesn't work for me anymore because I have other things now that are developing that I have to protect. What about you, Simone?
No, I think what she hit on too, you know, I agree with that as far as getting to know yourself first and knowing, you know, what exactly you want and how to, you know, verbalize that to somebody. I just know with my experience, like having a business partner, They said in the very beginning, I didn't establish my boundaries because I was in an industry I didn't know anything about. So I was more laid back and let them do most of the stuff. And it was stuff that I should have said, hey, this is a boundary, no.
Right.
I should have just cut ties. But because now I'm thinking, okay, well, it's gonna work, you know, I allow them to keep crossing over my boundaries and keep doing things to where take the business. So, you know that you have to be really, really, really
concrete.
Yes.
And solid. Yes. Yeah.
And you know, it's something that you just said, you allowed them to do it because in a sense you were relying on them. Because you needed them for something at that point. And I didn't want to cross this boundary because I need you right now.
Right.
And sometimes people feel like I need this person. I gotta have this person.
Right.
I have to have you right now. So I'm gonna put up and deal with
And
whatever.
give you a pass.
I'm gonna let you cross this boundary.
Uh-huh.
But even with that, like emotional boundaries, it's people that
That's good, Simone.
I don't really talk to like that anymore because talking to them is emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And you have to be really careful with that. You got to keep your boundaries like emotionally. Before I realized, it was, you know, a person I talk to all the time, and they were always depressed. There was always something going on. Before I know, I was like, man,
I'm depressed.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's why I was depressed so long.
Right,
You depressed now. I'm depressed. We sitting here depressed with each other. And I was just like, I really had to just cut off people that, you know, I would talk to for a while. But it's like, I can't talk to you. Because every time I talk to you, I get depressed.
Right.
You draining me.
Right.
And I really had to cut them in. It's nothing wrong with them, nothing against them or nothing. But it's like, when I talk to them, I have to change the conversation with them. Or if they start talking about, oh, you know, I'm depressed. Oh, this depressing stuff happened. I get off the phone. Oh, okay, I'm sorry to that. Okay, well, oh, let me get off the phone and talk to you.
Right.
Be careful. I can't put that energy on you.
So what about, because of course, you know, I wouldn't say it's easier setting boundaries with business partners, you know, friends, associates, but I think it's much harder to set boundaries with family. Because, you know, first of all, family, they're close and they feel entitled and they feel like sometimes they don't have to respect those lines because I'm family. How do you guys deal with that? Or have you ever run into a situation where you've had to set boundaries with family and they had a hard time accepting it?
I don't think I really set boundaries with my family. And I think some people I should have.
Yeah.
I think I would say I had to start with one of my family members just because of the negative conversation. And for me, it was like, I can't be around you if every time I come around you got something negative to say.
Yeah.
So that was a boundary I had to put, and it was to a point, it was sometimes I would walk through the door. I haven't walked through their door, and the first thing I think about there is, why you got that on?
Yeah.
Or why you look like that? I'll walk back out.
What you say, that's my bottom line right there. Yeah.
Because my whole day, and I had to tell them, you want to see me? You want me to come over? You need to change how you talk. Like, that's why don't nobody come over.
Right.
That's why nobody talks to you. Don't nobody want to hear all that negative stuff.
Right.
So it got to the point where I'll come over, and if something negative come out, I get up. No, wait, I don't have any, you know, it made them change.
Yeah.
So I guess you can't say
Yeah.
you maybe wanted to, but you know, for the most part, no, I don't. And sometimes we all just run each other over.
What about you, Bridget?
It was the same. I don't think as a family we've just never really have set boundaries. I think for the most part in our family, with the kids, we respected each other. For the most part, we have. And of course, when something's come up, we have gone toe for toe.
Right.
You know, on certain things, but you know, I say, well, it's just family. You know, everyone's not gonna get along forever and everything else. But in regards to like her, I had to set that boundary too. And it was kind of like she said, one of those, I brought it to their attention.
Right.
Now, do you realize what you just said? You know, everything that you say is always negative. And even too, when they would begin to have negative conversation with me, I would turn it. Well, what good? You know, what has been a good thing for you today?
Right.
Because it seems like you having a bad day. You know, and then when they would start, I would point it out. Did you hear what you just said?
Yeah.
You know, and it would be those things, and then I would say, I would get off the phone. Or even then too, like she said, I would come in and I say, well, I see where this is going. I'm about to go home.
Right.
And you know, and I will leave, and it is giving that fine line. This is the bottom line. I'm not taking. You can continue in the conversation, and I'll come back at a later time. You know, and it has been a lot better for, at least for me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it is for them, but for me, it's been a lot better because I have peace.
I was just gonna say it's about protecting your peace.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who you are. You know, I was asking that because a lot of people do have a hard time with family. You know, because they feel like, well, it's family and this and the other. But sometimes family can be the most disrespectful. You know, because they just see you as you. Even if you are in ministry, even if you are an entrepreneur, even if you are, you know, Oprah, they don't look at you like everybody else look at you. They just gonna see, you just you know. And it's like, okay, even with that, you have to respect my parameters. And so with me, I don't put a separation at all. Bridget knows that. Yeah, I mean, you know that too. I don't separate family from everybody else. Because when it's about my peace, it's my peace versus everybody else.
Yeah.
Whether you're family, whether you're a church member, whether you're a coworker, or whoever you are, it's like at the end of the day, when I set a bottom line, when I set a boundary, that applies to everybody. Everybody. And so it's like, you know, there are exceptions where you allow not them to cross your bottom line. But it's like, you know, you may bend the boundary a little depending upon, you know, the circumstance or contingent upon the person, you know, because some people you do have a closer relationship with, and you're like, okay, you have boundaries and then you have boundaries within boundaries. And that's it's kind of like those invisible lines that only you know about that everybody else can see. And so it's like, you know, it's almost like an alarm system where you're like, okay, they just have a digital alarm, but when you get inside, it's all those, you know what I mean? Right, the lasers are everywhere. And it's like, you know, that's how it is really set up in my life. You know, people see this big vault, and they're like, oh, well, I can get past this vault. And then, you know, they open the vault, and they're like, oh, wait, whoa. And then they may turn the lasers off, and it's like, wait a minute, what is that other encasement? And that's how I set my life up. And I'm not discriminatory towards anybody.
Yeah, because that do not disturb is for everybody.
Listen. They're everybody. And you know what? It's so funny because I get all the, okay, so what Bridget is talking about is my phone lives on Do Not Disturb. Okay? It's no secret. You know, I've admitted that. And so the thing is, I get people all the time, especially people who have Apple. They're like, you do know on iPhones, you can set a list where, you know, you can put certain people on that list. So when they call, their call comes through. I'm like, I know. I don't want anybody on that list. Because at the end of the day, if I don't feel like talking, I just don't feel like talking. I don't care who you are. You can be mama, daddy, sister, brother, pastor, preacher, the pope. God bless you. If you ain't Jesus, you ain't getting through this line. And so what I do is my boundaries, my parameters are when I'm ready to talk, I'll call you back. So it's not like I can't see who called, but when I'm ready or when I have the energy to have a conversation with you, regardless of where it's gonna go, then I'll call you back. And that's how I keep boundaries set in my life. And, you know, so many people, you know, don't agree with it, which is like, you don't have to agree with my boundaries. I'm not telling you how to fix your life. This is just how I do me. And whether you look at it like, well, you're keeping people out, that's what a boundary is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not that you're rejecting everybody and you're just pushing people out of your life. It's like, I'm protecting my peace. And how you choose to protect your peace is on you. But how I choose to protect mine, it's on me. It's a personal preference.
And it may not be necessarily pushing people out of your life.
Right.
It's just like with your Do Not Disturb. it's not like when I get that all the time when I call.
Yes.
It's not like I be like, oh my God, don't you pushing me out? She want to be my friend.
Right.
I know it's gonna go to do not disturb, and you know you're gonna get a text message from me saying, do not disturb.
Or if she leaves a voicemail, she's like, you have your phone on that doggone do not disturb.
Get your phone off and do not
call
disturb.
me back, you know. I'll get there and I'm like, okay, Simone called. I need to call Simone back.
But it doesn't bother us because we respect that. You know, it's the same thing. If someone is really for you, they're going to respect it. And you can understand that because some people feel entitled to you. And that I'm exempt to your boundary. I'm exempt to this. No, you're not exempt.
And I'm supposed to tap dance to your dance. No.
And you know what? I think some people just feel like they're privy to your life.
Right.
You know, because you've given them access somewhere else at some point. So they automatically feel, well, that doesn't apply to me.
Right.
You know, I'm exempt from that rule. And you're like, okay, let me help you out. Because clearly somewhere I misrepresented myself where you feel like that's okay and it's not. So with all of that established, guys, now let's get to it's a wrap. Because y'all know I used to have a cutoff spirit, right?
Yes.
Where okay, I said this too. I said, you know, where it was a one-hit quitter. And it really was a defense mechanism because, you know, I have such a tender heart. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's just like, when you burn me, it's a wrap. It's a wrap because I love so hard and I love so freely. You know, I remember my sister, before she got married, I went to lunch with her and he was her boyfriend at the time, and he was just asking us questions because I have 5 sisters, and people just get curious. How is it dealing with so many girls and this, that, and the other? And he was like, "Who loves the hardest?" And my sister was like, "Zanya." And he was like, "Zanya?" You know, it was kind of a shock. And she's like, "No. You don't understand. Zanya loves hard. She loves unconditional. She loves without boundaries. She has such a free heart." She was like, "But when you burn her, it's a done deal." And I started laughing because it's so true, because I give it so freely. I don't know, a limitation when it comes to love, when it comes to opening my heart. I give it all. You know how some people are like, I open my heart, but only a little bit, because I don't trust people like that. I don't know how to do that. And so what I do is I have to protect myself. So when I've opened so freely and you burn me, I'm like, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. And I may forgive you. I can forgive you, still love on you. God bless you. When I see you, give you a hug, and you in a whole nother category. And I think that is so important because you have to set another boundary. Another boundary. And instead of just going through life like I used to, where people would do little stuff and I'm like, it's a wrap, boo. I cut you off. You're done. I just turn into a whole samurai and I'm just, I'm just cutting. And so with maturity and healing, because a lot of times you jump to that extreme because you're still hurting. And so then everybody else gets the consequence that was meant for only the person that hurt you. And so I had to learn, okay, Zanya, first of all, that ain't the love of Christ. Jesus ain't walking through and just cutting everybody off that hurt him. All the people that spit on him, that said crucify him. He was like, it's a wrap. I ain't dying for you. I'm dying for everybody except you. And you like, generations to come. And so I was just like, when he told me, Zanya, that's not a heart that's fit for the kingdom, it really broke me because I was like, well, God, help me because you gave me this heart. So help me to manage it. How do I, protect myself from these things? And so now that I have learned to establish bottom lines, it's just certain things that I'm just never going to tolerate. And so it's like, I used to cut you off and be like, I'm done. Go on about your business. Now it's more so, okay, you did that and I forgive you, but you're no longer allowed in this area. So you're going to have to stay outside this parameter. You know how, what's the people have on their fences or whatever, do not trespass. That then you got a sign now. When you look at me, it says do not trespass. But God, if I see you outside my gate, I'm gonna say, how you doing? God bless you. So what At what point do you guys say it's a wrap?
I think when I was younger, I was so, okay, well, let me see if I can help again. And I would go past my boundaries. But now, even when being married, your boundaries and things, you kind of have to play them a little different. Because
you know what? I'm glad you said that. Let me interject for a second. Because since you are married, how different is that? Because some people feel like, well, I'm married, I don't have to establish bottom lines with my spouse, which we know is not true.
Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. And I think the same way you do it for anybody else, day one before you get married, it should be the boundaries.
Right.
Why y'all are dating? And those should continue when y'all married. Just because y'all married, they don't give them free will to do whatever they want with you.
Right, right.
It's still a boundary. Now, I look at it as depending on the person. If they cross that boundary, like I said, it was certain stuff you did, I'm done with you. And I really had to work on that being married, because when you're married, so many people, somebody does something you don't like, I'm done. Well, no, let's go get a divorce.
Right.
And they may have crossed that, but if you're married, you saying I'm supposed to be committed to you, and it's, I mean, something that's not like, you know, my boundaries, don't punch me, you punching on, you know, that's totally, you know, get out. But, you know, if it's something that you can work on and they have crossed it, as long as they know they crossed the boundary with you and they're willing to work on it, to change, to earn your trust back, you said that you wanted to be committed to this person, good or bad. And it's like I said, as long as you are trying to level up, they're trying to level up, and you're trying, you gotta let them do it.
So how does that apply to, and I'm asking seriously because I'm listening and I'm like, man, that is so true. In a marriage, you know, it's not just one hit or quit.
Yeah.
And so and I'm asking both of y'all, honestly, I know Bridget said she's working on this, but you know, Bridget is a lot more gracious. And I can use a little of that too. Let me pass that anointing on to me, you know, but how do us regular folk,
I
apply that?
Had to learn that, because you know, at the very beginning of our marriage, it was like you crossed some boundaries. So for me to even open up to somebody, and then you cross me, I shut down. That's it. I shut all the way down on you.
Yes.
I don't have nothing else to say to you. I don't want nothing to do with you. And that's how I got in my marriage. And they would call me and be like, how's your marriage? I'd be like, yeah, it's a marriage, whatever. You know, I was like that for a minute.
To the T.
Yes. For a minute. And it was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I really had to communicate. I mean, really break it down. This is what you crossed. And this is, because you crossed it, this is what you have caused in our marriage. Now, either we can work on it or we can go. But if you continue to cross it, we're not working on nothing. Because you are not going to get me out of my character, out of a place of where I'm trying to, out of my peace. So, you know what? Hey, we worked on it. It's great.
So at what point does it become abuse? And I'm not talking about abuse like poo-poo or verbal, but abuse is just abusing me. You know what I'm saying?
I think, okay, so for me, it was, once they crossed it, y'all talked about it, you know, they have to be willing to work on it. Now, if they cross it again, then it's like, okay. For me, it's like, okay, you know, you're not trying to. Now, if you decide to, hey, you know, okay, we're gonna work this out. Even if they cross it again, they have to show you steps of, okay, I'm being serious.
Right.
If they're not showing you anything and they continue, you have to realize this person does not care about my feelings. This person doesn't respect me. This person doesn't respect my boundaries. It's time to go.
So do you think it's contingent upon the relationship though? You know, because of course, you know, your relationship with different people has levels.
Yes.
And so, you know, when you have somebody, and I will say this, when you have people who are closer to you, you're a bit more lenient. You know, you can be a bit more gracious, merciful, and forgiving, a little more long-suffering, But when it's people that's barely in the box
It's easy to
anyway,
just be like,
yeah, well, God bless.
I would think
Yeah.
even if I wasn't married and we had the same situation, I'd been
Gone. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
because especially when you're married, you have to understand you are not married to this person. You are married to that person. You are married to their kids. You are married to their family. They are married to your kids if you have kids. So whatever happens in that marriage, it affects everybody.
Yeah.
So whatever decision you make, it's not going to be a decision just you made it for yourself. You making a decision for your kids. You making a decision for whatever parents are involved. You making it for everybody.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure when you make your decisions, okay, this is what I want to do and this is why I'm doing it. And you just can't do it because you hurt my feelings right now.
Bridget, what do you think? When is it time to say it's a wrap? Oh. Is there ever a time, Bridget, that you say it's a wrap?
I do. And I think again it goes back to relationships.
Right.
The value that you have in my life. Like Zion said, and Simone know this too. I am very gracious. You know, when you sit there and some people, I have patience. You be like, I don't even know why you talking to them people. You know, and everything else. But for me, and sometimes what they may not see, you may never get close to me where you were in my life. And there's some things there, I may have shared some things with you, we talked to you, and you were my BFF, everything else, and then you cross me. And from this point, I'll see you on the side of the road. I'm going to help you change your tire or call somebody, but we're not going to sit and invite you over for dinner afterwards. You know, whereas you can come over for dinner, this and this, whatever else. And that all goes back to depending on what you did to me or how I felt about you. You know, at that time, how you made me feel, you know, at that time. And I think for me, it's just because, like I said, I at first I would feel bad, like if you got hit by a truck and I passed by you when the car was coming, you know, and I was like, well, if I had to just stayed and helped, then it wouldn't have been like that. But then I have to go back and revert to myself and say that wasn't on me anyway. You know, that wasn't my responsibility. So I think, and honestly, what I'm learning right now is that some people have to be let go. Because one, again, if you're staying around and I'm carrying too much weight in this car, there may be somewhere else in this journey where if I have this much excess weight, it's gonna cause me to wreck out. And that's the same thing as carrying the wrong people into another season, carrying things that should have been released from me before, because I'm carrying around excess baggage that I did not have to have. And sometimes where you're going in your future and what your purpose is, some people are not aligned with your purpose at that time. And what I don't see is, and the next level that I'm about to go to, that person can't be there because it may mess up your next level. Where you're going, they cannot be attached to where you're going in your life.
Because it will be detrimental.
It will be detrimental to where you're going. And that's the main thing is really one for me was learning spiritually maturing as a person, releasing, you know, things from the past, and especially on the spiritual side, and seeing, okay, I have purpose. What is my purpose? And just because what was working for me before really wasn't working for me before. You know, and it's not until you fully realize that there has to be a point to where you're able to release some things, because even in your purpose, God may say you're done. Right now, you're done here at this place, and you got to be willing to say, let me pick up my bags and go. Because that could be the difference between life and death for you.
You know what? Is there ever a time that you have to say it's a wrap when they haven't done anything wrong? You just know it's time to part ways. Because usually when we hear it's a wrap, it's always something negative attached, or, you know, a conflict, contention, or tension period. Is there ever a time that you guys had to release people without it ever being that?
I would think so. Because sometimes your relationship is just, it wasn't going anywhere. And sometimes a relationship will get you stagnated. So, I mean, there's some people, we fell out, and then we got back friends, and then just we we just don't talk. And it's not like I got anything against them. It's not like they got anything against me. It's just where I'm at in my life, our relationship don't benefit each other.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, I wish you the best of luck. I wish you happiness, success, everything. I wish nothing but good for you, but I don't benefit for talking to you or making sure you're in my life.
Yeah, and I think every relationship or the end of every relationship don't deserve a goodbye or a conclusion or farewell. You know, it just happens.
Yeah.
I remember there was one particular person that I had been friends with or whatever, and I started noticing their pattern. You know, and I was just like, that's not conducive for where I'm going. And so I remember telling Bridget, I was like, I ain't gonna cut them off. I ain't gonna be like, you know what, this ain't working. You go about your business. I'm just gonna leave it where you left it.
Yeah.
And it began to phase out on its own. It wasn't that I didn't care about them. It wasn't that, you know, I wish bad on them. We didn't have a fallout. It was nothing like that. It was just like, okay, where you are, I see that's not gonna work. It's not in alignment for who I am, for where I am, and where God is taking me. You know, you're too complacent, and that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And so I knew immediately, okay, we gotta wrap that. And so even though I still talk to them, it's not like they're in the category that they were. You know, it's not like I give them as much access as I would with Bridget or I would with you or anything like that. And it's not like they even know. They never notice a difference.
Yeah.
And the comical thing, you know, I got a little petty street. The comical thing about it is, you know, they thought they were really doing something to me. And I was just like, baby, you have no idea. You already in another category. So the little steps or little, you know, teeter-totter or whatever you want to say that you're doing, I'm so not affected. At all. And so I think it's sometimes, you know, we think that something huge or explosive has to happen for us to dismiss ourselves or start parting ways or letting it fade out. Like when you start seeing that things aren't reciprocated, like the Bible says, iron sharpening iron. If I'm constantly pouring out and it's just not coming back the same way, then I don't have to yell at you. I don't have to, you know, argue, like my auntie say, with you. You know, I'm just gonna let you have your way. And what I mean by that is, I'm gonna leave you right where you left me. And so when it becomes, I haven't heard from Sonya. Oh, well, I had called you. You never called me back 2 years ago. You know what I mean? I mean, it's all good, but you know, it just is what it is. So have you ever done that, Bridget? She's like,
I mean, you know, there's times where there is nothing wrong at all.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, we haven't had an argument. There's nothing, you know, that's there, but you just find yourself distancing.
Right.
You know, and it may be that you're just in two different places in your life right now. That and I know there was a time for me, and I mean, I'm kind of still at that point to where I've had to isolate myself to really deal with myself. So sometimes it's not my bottom line is cutting you out because you're detrimental to me. No, I'm detrimental to myself. So let me go ahead and isolate myself, cut, you know, and figure out what my bottom line is. You know, in order to establish, because I can't reestablish what I never established. So, you know, to establish boundaries, to establish some things within myself, you know, that's there because it's not always the other person.
Right.
And on top of that too, again, sometimes it is a point to where sometimes it is a close friend, sometimes it's not. That I don't always have to explain. And you know, sometimes your value of friendship too, you find that out when you get quiet. Because if I've changed some things and you're not checking on me, we might not be as close as we were. You know, and as close as you thought. Because if you've changed something, and I'm big on, if I call and I don't hear from you, you know, and you're not calling me back and that's out of your character, I'm gonna call you back. I'll come and I'm say, hey, you need to call before I come over there. You know, that's a safety, you know, thing for me. So if it's something to where I really value you and I'm checking on you, but you're not checking on me, then you got to reevaluate a friendship too. And sometimes I don't have to call, like you say, I leave it where it is.
Right.
Because it's one of those silent understandings. You know, okay, well, I guess we are where we are.
Right.
You know, it's no hard feelings at all because I can see you again somewhere where we can still hold a conversation and we're good and I'm not angry or anything like that.
So at the end of the day, what do you want people to know about, you know, saying it's a wrap, about boundaries, about bottom lines? Because there are some people watching and they may be like, okay, I'm like Pastor Z, I set them bottom lines quickly. And I want to say this before we go into that bottom lines can change.
They can.
They can change based on life experiences, based on tragedy, based on trauma, based on relationship. Right. It's contingent upon your situation and where you are in life. You're constantly growing. You're constantly maturing. So what used to be zero tolerance, you may have a little more tolerance for it in the next season because you've healed in an area, you know, you've grown in an area, or, you know, the responsibilities in your life have changed, or, you know, the load has lightened up. And so where you used to say, I have to run a tight ship, now I can be a little more relaxed. Now I can kind of stretch those boundaries a little, where it's like, you know, beforehand it's like, lock and key, chain, laser lights, you know, fence, bolt lock, and all of these things, you know, the swivel vault door. And it's like, as you evolve in life, your boundaries do change. And as you evolve in life, your bottom lines, you know, do change. And it's not to say that you're flaky. It's not to say that you're inconsistent. It's just that you're remaining adaptable and flexible to the season that you're in.
And you're growing. So it's some stuff, maybe when you first started out establishing it, you couldn't deal with it.
Right.
So you had to cut it out because you weren't able to deal with it in a healthy way. But as you grow, some stuff that you can say, yeah, I had to cut this off. Now that you're growing and you have growth, that same deal, you can say, okay, I can sit back and see why this happened, what happened, and we can reevaluate.
Right.
So, like I said, depending on where you at.
And I love that you elaborated on growing. Because I in my mind, I picture this big sweater, right? And you know how your parents will buy you something too big and you're like, I can't fit it, and they say, you'll grow into it. And I think that's the same thing when it comes to boundaries. Sometimes you set boundaries because you know where you're going. And other people may look at your boundary and say, it ain't even that serious, you ain't even that important. Well, I'm growing into this boundary. And guess what? I'm not gonna wait until I've grown into it to set this bottom line. I'm gonna set it right now. You get what I'm saying? And it's like, you know, even with my do not disturb, you know, some people feel like, Zion, ain't nobody check for you like that, for your phone to be on do not disturb. You know, you ain't even that hot, you ain't that important. Well, guess what? Obviously, you think I'm that hot and important because you bothered that my phone is on D&D. You get what I'm saying? And so I think it's so important to not allow outside voices, outside elements to control your controlled environment. Does that make sense? And so I want us to help, you know, our sisters that are watching, and even our brothers that they may be tuning in, because I know y'all be listening. Don't even try to act like y'all ain't checking in on girls talk, because y'all probably trying to find out information for your little relationships and stuff. But I know this is an ongoing problem for a lot of people, and it's not that they're bad people. It's not that, you know, they don't care about themselves. You know, some people just don't know how to set those bottom lines. They don't know how to set those boundaries and parameters. A lot of times it's out of fear, you know, like Bridget said, fear of losing somebody, fear of losing a relationship, you know, or fear of they not going to respect me. I'm scared of how people going to look at me. They may look at me like, oh, you think you really something now? But as you grow, and as you change, and as you become more blessed, especially, you know, in the church, when you get that harvest, baby, them bottom lines and them boundaries got to be real quick. And you better learn them, or you're going to be like some people who, you know, it was like you saw them up and then boop, 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 boop. They right back down because they couldn't figure out how to establish those bottom lines and boundaries. So, Simone, what would you say, you know, to the people who are watching, where you can help them establish that?
Like we said earlier, to really get to know yourself first, because you can't go in and tell somebody what you expect. You don't even know who you are and what you want to expect.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. Figure out what is it that you're going to tolerate, what is it that you're not going to tolerate, and stand on it. And once you tell somebody, hey, X, Y, and Z, especially starting out, you have to stand on that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, like she said, they gonna pull you back down, and you back at, you know, square one. So sometimes you do starting out have to be a little harder, and that's, you know, for them, but it's also for you to help build you up and grow. And once you start growing, then okay, you know, these are my boundaries, but these are my parameters now. This is what I can tolerate. This is what you can stay within these parameters. So it's a process.
And then recognize that most people who don't respect your boundaries, your bottom lines, or parameters, and then those who don't or think it's stupid or it's not necessary, if you really consider your source, they don't have boundaries. They don't have bottom lines. That's why they have all these contaminants and toxins in their lives and allow any type of, you know, debris to come in. And you're like, that's why your life's so jacked. Because baby, if you put up some parameters and boundaries instead of bottom line, your life will be so jacked up.
Yeah.
And you won't be worried about my lines of boundaries. Amen? Bridget?
For people that's like me, it's never too late to start.
Right.
Never think that you're stuck. Never think that it's too late. The only time it's too late is when you're not breathing anymore.
Yeah.
It's too late then.
Yeah.
So it's never too late to start. And again, you know, like I said before, deal with self first. Because until you deal with self, you can't deal with everything else that's outside. And also know that as you mature and you grow, the things that you want, the things you can tolerate, they'll change. You know, sometimes you'll have your set standard that's there, but at the same time too, in growing, when you're growing spiritually, your taste for things change.
Yeah.
And that'll go for the same thing in regards to your taste for people. What I can tolerate, what I used to tolerate, I can't tolerate anymore.
Yeah.
What I used to could not tolerate, all of a sudden now I'm all the way open for it. So your boundaries will change, and that's the same thing. Just like with a business, evaluate and reevaluate. That's the same thing with a person. Evaluate and reevaluate. Set goals. Is this something that I'm still in a place in my life where I still feel this way? If so, keep that. If it's something where you say, you know what, that doesn't even bother me anymore, change that. And then you have to reevaluate, because that may have been a boundary that you should have left up there. So, you know, evaluate, reevaluate, and be real with yourself.
And I will say this: stop looking for people to validate and affirm your boundaries. Those are yours. You don't need permission from anybody. You don't need a breakdown plan of how do you think I should do this. You know what? You know what works for your life. And so don't set a boundary and then be like, what you think about this, Simone? You think I should keep this line? Simone don't live my life. She don't walk in my shoes. Neither does Bridget. You know, and then her tolerance for certain things is different from mine. And so is Bridget's. And so it's like, you know, when you start to do that, then you're already losing the battle. Because you're not paying attention to your need. And so I want to leave you with that. Do not look for permission. Do not seek validation. And do not have the need for somebody to affirm your bottom line and your parameters and boundaries for your life. So I appreciate y'all ladies, the Broadneck sisters, my friends, for being here with me on Girl Talk. You know, I know usually we're a little more giddy and laughter-y. Is laughter a word? I made that up. Simone's like, I mean, I'm good for it. Bridget's like, no, it's not. It's not a word.
It's a word.
Right. Y'all get what we meant. But it was one of those things where it really needs to sink in. Because, you know, I know we're in a season where we're like, God, the harvest is coming. The harvest is right. Everything that God said that you're getting ready to get, it's about to come to pass, and it's going to hit quickly. Your Amos 9 and 13 moment is coming. He shall blah, 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 blah. And so many people are unprepared.
And
So
like
many
you
people
said, the biggest thing
unprepared.
is the boundaries. If you don't set them while you're trying to get to your harvest, somebody will destroy whatever it is you create, or it can even kill you, have you locked up. So you have to be so protective of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, she's right. So I pray that you guys let all of this sink in, that you listen to our own personal stories and you like, well, you know what? I can relate to that. You know what? You're absolutely right. Let me think, go take the time to, like Bridget said, evaluate, assess and reassess. Think about the people in your life. Think about the relationships in your life. Think about what's a priority, in your life, and then create a bottom line. And you have to make everybody else. And by make, I'm not talking about, go and put a hook around their neck or anything. It's like when you set it, stick to it. Because if you don't respect your boundaries and bottom lines, nobody else will. And it doesn't matter the flack or the talk back, the backlash that you're going to get for setting it. That doesn't matter. Set it. Stick to it. And if you're, having a difficult time saying it's a wrap, like Bridget, then ask God to give you strength. Ask God to give you boldness. Ask God to give you wisdom on how to do it. And He will. The Holy Spirit will lead and guide you and teach you in all things. So don't feel like that's just not me. I don't have that kind of heart. I'm not like Zanya and Simone. They're a little more hardcore. I'm more like Bridget. I'm just a little feather and butterfly for Jesus. And
She ain't that all the way. Like, so don't you feel like it's a feather and butterfly? Right. It's a beast up in there.
Yeah, it is. But what I'm saying is it takes you a little longer to get there. And so in that process, you're burned a lot more.
Yes,
you're hurt a lot more.
Yes.
You're disappointed a lot more. You're let down a lot more. And you can save yourself from a lot of hurt and disappointment and pain, by getting it now. So if you are already somebody who knows how to set boundaries and bottom lines, help those around you. And if you're somebody that don't know how, share this video, rewatch it, put it in your archive, go pray and write down some things, evaluate, write a list of things that you need to protect, and stick to it, okay? Listen, thank y'all so much for joining me for another episode of Girl Talk. Y'all know every Friday we are right here and we have hot topics and we are talking about some real things. And so ladies, gentlemen, whoever you are watching, join us again next week where we keep it real, we keep it raw, and we keep it classy. You guys have a beautiful night. Have a blessed weekend. Be safe. We'll see you next week.
We pushing.